What happened in the recent attacks was to cause the Rohingya to leave their country. They were being forcibly driven out. There was mass killings. There was atrocities that were committed with a view to terrorising the population to force them out of the country. And that all qualifies as genocide. I thought that I'd been got to that point in my career doing this work where I was a sort of fairly cold, objective, dispassionate, detached, cold bastard, if you excuse the language. But I was really affected reading that report. It was widespread, systematic, it was inflicted upon a vulnerable population. The government had complete control of the land. If they wanted to proceed against any potential combatants, such as ASA, which was the local Rohingya combatant group, they could have done it. They had total control. They could lock down villages as they did, but they went beyond that. And the policies in Myanmar are such that the Rohingya people don't exist. My sense before I arrived in the mission was what most people had seen in the media, that yes, there'd been atrocities of different kinds, but there was no real sort of sense of the scale, whether there were mass graves there, the extent of any human rights violations. I was quite surprised with my very first interview that I did. We walked in, we weren't into the middle of the camps, we were all dispersed. We were given a methodology to follow. The gentleman I spoke to, he told me about no less than 3 significant massacres, one of which involved hundreds of bodies floating in a waterway, and I was quite surprised to start that strong. That evening, when I sort of reassembled with my colleagues and we did a debrief, essentially everyone had the same story. Mass killings were much more common than I'd expected for day one. The nature of the brutality, the sheer variety of brutal methods that have been employed against the Rohingya people is shocking. There's no doubt in my mind that this is systematic and widespread. In Myanmar specifically, one of the threats that was always held out was the potential for your wives and daughters to be raped. So a frequent occurrence amongst the people we interviewed was where the local Rakhine civilian leader, not an ethnic Rohingya, would come in and they would say, we want 50 or 60 young women brought to us tomorrow, and of course then with the obvious implication that they're going to be raped. As a result of that, then the population of the village would say, we're not going to do that, so they would then pack up and leave. I think it's a combination of this US State Department report and the UN Human Rights report that was just presented to the Security Council recently. Those things can't be ignored. There's something that needs to happen, whether or not it's going to involve a UN response or potentially a regional response. Australia has a fairly solid record of appropriately intervening, such as in the Solomon Islands with the Ramsay mission. It needs to be acted on. The Australian government has a lot of weight in this area of international humanitarian law, and I think it needs to throw it around. But you can't talk about accountability until you've got stability. So the first step needs to be an agreement as to getting a peacekeeping force or stability force in there, whether it's a UN force, or a regional force, which coupled with those other structures. And I feel that I'm helping to contribute to the history of these various conflicts in various regions. I think it's very important that comes back here. I think I try to get across to my children now, the little bit that I do tell them, that why I go into these strange places and do these things, and it's very important. When we see refugees appearing in Australia, we need to understand why they're here.